This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are live here in the studio, just back from a round of trips to Hong Kong, China, and to Washington, D.C., and then a little R&R time. So we're back here live in the studio. We are coming up to the end of our year here, so we've got 3 more shows left. I'm going to guess that very few of you are going to join us on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. You'll more than likely catch us on the podcast. So I'm going to give you the heads up now that we are going to do pre-record the next 2 shows. So they'll be available as the podcast and on the show itself. But given the holiday season, everybody should be spending time with your family and friends and enjoying a little bit of downtime. So let's catch up a little bit about what's going on here at the show. We are broadcasting live. The studio work is still continuing. Actually, during the commercial break, if you happen to be watching us on Facebook Live, we'll show you a shot of the studio here that you get a little bit of a broader view about what's going on here. And you're also going to notice that with our guest today that we are going to show it to you in a little bit different format than we normally do. Hopefully you'll find it more interesting, and at least I hope to experiment with this a little bit. So looking for your feedback. Don't be shy. Let us know what you think of the show, and let us know how we can improve it. We are in season 12. We've got season 13 coming up. We've been talking about the contest for the season 13 launch in March. I'm going to hold that for the end of the show and give you kind of the construct of what the contest will be and how you can win a slot to come onto the show. And you get the 1-hour slot for the show. We get to have a conversation about anything you want as long as it follows FCC rules. We are a live radio show, by the way. But here's your chance. If you've got like a really interesting idea, you want to do kind of an on-air brainstorming, whatever it is you want to do, we're going to give a shot for one listener to compete and actually win a 1-hour slot here in the show. And that gives you a national footprint, 35 stations throughout the U.S., talk radio stations, and your show will be put out as the podcast. So you get all the listeners both here in the U.S. and around the world. So stay tuned. We are going to cover that at the end of the show. Now, normally during the show, we bring on guests, and today is no different. Today's guest that we have here with us today is Tyler Reynolds. Tyler came to us from I got introduced to him through UpRamp, which is we sometimes call it an accelerator, but it's really not an accelerator. Scott Brown, who runs UpRamp for me, refers to it as a fiterator. Think of it as a graduate school program for companies that have got real products. They've received their first round of funding, and it's more about helping with product market fit is really the role. So Tyler was one of the co-founders and CEOs of one of the companies, and I'm going to give him a minute here to introduce himself and introduce the company. But I wanted to bring Tyler on and share kind of his background. He's a Yale guy, so don't hold that against him. So he is an Ivy League dude. And if I recall correctly, also Morgan Stanley, but we'll get into that here a little bit later. But Tyler, first of all, thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday to come on to the show here. Welcome to Killer Innovations.
Thanks so much, Phil. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you again for inviting me.
No problem. So, Tyler, before we get into the company that you've been involved in, you give us a little bit of your history here. Give us a little bit of little background on who Tyler is.
Sure. So, grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. Have been thinking about networking since I was, about 6 years old, and have sort of done a whole bunch of different things, from physics to trading to cognitive science. Really, really a whole bunch of different things.
But you did go to Yale, right?
I did.
I got that right.
Yes.
What did you major at Yale?
So I started out in the physics major. Freshman year, I interned over at CERN, which is the Large Hadron Collider and the
Actually, a
Atlas program.
little trivia information: CERN is where the web was invented.
Yes, I saw the very room where Tim Berners-Lee invented it. So they have a little plaque right up to the doorway.
You're in good company because Tim's been on the show.
Oh, okay.
So you can go back Sir Tim Berners-Lee invented the web, World Wide Web. So if you're interested, it's a great interview, but it's a number of years back. But go on to Co-Innovations, you can search for it. But go ahead. So you interned at CERN.
Yeah. So I interned at CERN, and thought, oh, this is so cool, and I'm going to go get my PhD. And actually now having interned in a lab and figured out sort of what industrial science looks like, realized that sort of academia was not the right place for me. So I also entered at a bunch of different finance places even before I actually got to college. Morgan Stanley, Shenyang and Wangguo in Shanghai, smaller investment bank, FBR. So all these sort of different experiences have been very interesting, and being able to tie it all into Trinity has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you were at Yale. You went to Morgan Stanley, right?
I was actually at Morgan Stanley when I was 16.
At 16. Okay. Yeah. Your LinkedIn profile doesn't reveal that. Actually, separate little rabbit hole. I'm well known amongst the listeners of jumping into these rabbit holes. So, because I've had a number of amazing innovators on the show. I've had them as young as 9 on the show, and some of these kids are just doing amazing stuff. So 16, you was an intern, I'm guessing, at Morgan Stanley.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny how the way that worked out was I started out as an intern, just moving boxes and filling up printers and stuff like that. I snuck into a meeting where they were pitching an MLP fund. I was the only one that read the prospectus. And basically the guy who was pitching the MLP fund was saying a bunch of stuff that was just not consistent at all. I call him out on it in the middle of the meeting, and the other people at Morgan Stanley say, "Who is this guy?" And so they one of them comes up to me after and said, "What team are you on?" I go, "Oh no, I'm just an intern." And they move me from, packing up boxes to now analyzing equities and stuff like that.
That's at 16.
At 16. So it was a great experience. Had a lot of fun doing it.
Now that is funny. Now I've had some pretty bold interns work for me over the years, and in fact, every year when we bring in the interns, I give them a little bit of a pep talk, and then I tell them who my previous interns are. So, for instance, the guy who runs all of the gaming products at Logitech was an intern of mine. The one of the founders of Major League Gaming, the big pro gaming league, he was an intern of mine. Number 2 designer at Pebble, except for Pebble just got sold, was an intern. Internships, I'm a big believer in interns, by the way. So after Morgan Stanley and after Yale, how did you get from doing that to Trinity then?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny the way that worked out was my co-founder and I were at the Harvard-Yale football game, and the game was at Yale that year, and there was just no connectivity whatsoever because, obviously the cellular networks were completely overloaded. And what we found was the only way we could get online was if we stood by the announcer's booth where there was Wi-Fi. And we thought, okay, there's enough throughput here actually to cover the entire network. We just needed to have people, relay the good connection to Wi-Fi. So what we worked on was a system that could create peer-to-peer connections between devices, as well as integrate the Wi-Fi and cellular networks so the end experience to the user was completely seamless. So Trinity's, come from that idea, working in the dining halls to now working with some large MSOs.
Oh, that's amazing.
Amazing experience.
That's amazing. So this is always an interesting point around innovation, though. It tends to be, the ones that really tend to get early traction are the ones where passion kicks in, and passion tends to come from, I've got this problem. Nobody else has solved it. So forget everybody else. I'm going to go solve it, even if I'm just solving it for a customer base of 1.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much how it started out with my co-founder, Stephen Hall, and I, as well as pretty much everyone that's been on the team is very passionate about fixing this problem because they have it too.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So We're going to take a quick commercial break here and come right back. When we talk about specifically the more information about Trinity, how it got started, where it's currently at, but also some of those lessons learned. What are those things that you would love to hear about or love to know when you start that you learn throughout that process? So stay right there. We're going to be right back after this commercial break. If you're on Facebook Live, go ahead and send your questions. We'll answer those questions during the commercial break. Otherwise, stay right there, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio Network.
Biz Talk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here each and every week talking about innovation, creativity, and design, how to take that idea that's rattling around in your head and turn it into something real, something that will have impact, something that could change the world. Today's guest is Tyler Reynolds. Tyler has been part of the UpRamp Fiterator program for the last 6 months or so, which is how I got involved and got to know more about them. So Tyler, before we get jumping in here too quickly, let's give everybody kind of a little bit of background now on Trinity. The guy, they know you. So we talked a little bit about the problem you were trying to solve, which was bandwidth at the Yale game. Now the question is so what's Trinity?
Yeah, so Trinity Mobile Networks makes JumpNet, and JumpNet is a software product that can combine Wi-Fi, cellular, and mesh networks so that the end experience for the user is completely seamless. And so, to talk a little bit more about the problem, one thing that happens a lot of the times is, we move from a Wi-Fi connection to a cellular connection or vice versa, and because the networks are not integrated, the connection experience is really bad. So one problem that happens to me every single day, and talking about personal problems, this is another major driver, is every day as I walk into work, I listen to Pandora. And every day as I'm walking down the sidewalk, I join onto community and public Wi-Fi hotspots that I previously joined. Even when doing so, kills my connection. So I'll be streaming some song and it latches on and the song will just stop. So I have to pull out my phone, manually turn off Wi-Fi, and this is a very, very frustrating experience. So by seamlessly integrating Wi-Fi and cellular networks, we can just see what the best connection available is on a throughput basis, on a cost basis, really whatever we want to define, and make sure that the user is getting the best experience possible. So you can join that Wi-Fi network, but perhaps only 10% of your traffic is sent over it. The rest is sent over the cellular network. And your song keeps streaming, and you don't even know that this is happening. This is all happening in the background.
Yeah, and this is actually the common problem, right? The default action is turn off your Wi-Fi.
Right.
Then you forget to turn it back on.
Exactly.
Then you get the overage charges, right? And then you're screaming and yelling because now you get this. You've blown through your limit by week 3, and you got a week to go with no broadband.
Yep. No, you definitely feel the penny pinching. You see your data cap, you get your text message from a cell phone carrier. You're at 90% of your cap, and you have 2 weeks left to go.
Right.
So the goal here is really to make sure that Wi-Fi networks are seamlessly integrated with cellular networks, so that you don't have to think. You can leave your Wi-Fi on, and when Wi-Fi is available, you're using that. But when it's otherwise going to provide a bad experience, we're using cellular without you needing to turn off your Wi-Fi connection.
Oh wow, that's actually, well, I mean, I've known about Trinity, but I keep thinking about this problem, right? I started off back in the early days of cellular, building some of the original cellular networks back when it was analog, before it was even digital. And I would have never predicted where the industry had gone today. If I would have invested more and been in a different financial position. But this problem's been around for so long. Why hasn't anybody else fixed it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one that we ask ourselves as well. And I think what it comes down to is the fact that the cellular guys, for the longest time, have always been, very concerned about managing every aspect of the network. And so you look at Wi-Fi, which is inherently unmanaged, and this is something that they don't like. I think the other aspect of it is that, the cellular guys are really outdoor guys that are fighting to get in home. And the MSOs who are just starting to move into the wireless space with their own MVNOs, like Comcast just announced, or even just more public Wi-Fi, are traditionally more in-home guys that are fighting to get out. So I think that because people have looked at these networks completely separately, they haven't really looked or felt the need to integrate them, when before you could completely control the customer experience, when the customer experience was just about voice calls.
Well, I think this also points out that, when you look at a problem and you say, wow, this is a problem everybody has, nobody else has solved it, so it must not be solvable. It's kind of that negative talk that innovators sometimes will get themselves into, meaning,
Yep.
they don't think of themselves as having a unique perspective or a unique thought on the problem. It's an obvious problem. So if nobody else has solved it, what makes me think I can solve it? In your guys' case, it's a problem that's been out there. Everybody's known about it for so long. But now, all of a sudden, now you've come up with the ability to solve it.
I think one of the funny things is we started talking to people very early on about our solution. And they say, the operators will never implement something like that. And, we just kind of ignored them. And it took a long time to actually get connected with Cable Labs. And we think the UpRamp program is just phenomenal in terms of, providing connections within the industry. But once you actually make those connections, they are absolutely, very interested in a solution, especially an over-the-top solution like ours, that can integrate networks that doesn't require a lot of changes. So the funny thing about it is we actually started a much more invasive, our solution required more network changes on a lower level for both the handset and the back end. But as soon as we made it over the top, we got so much inbound interest, because I think that was the real key. Everyone thought, I need to control the network and every single aspect of the network. But once you move to an over-the-top solution, you find that you actually fix a lot of the problems people thought they couldn't otherwise have fixed.
Yeah, because I think the immediate assumption is that you've got to go in and do a bunch of integration. You got to create technology. You got to get it into phones. Then you got to get into towers. Then you got to get into access points on the Wi-Fi side. And you're 10 years down the line before
and several
all of those
billion
pieces
dollars, right?
actually get there. Yeah, this is one of the challenges in the whole innovation game, which is we fear will have us talk us out of an idea before we actually even get started, because it looks so daunting and so big and involves so many players in an ecosystem that we get into this habit of saying, wow, that's 10 years down the line, that'll never work. In your guys' case, coming in with an over-the-top, which means there's pretty limited effort on the integration side from the players, just a natural gluing effect of bringing the federated networks together. You solve a problem without a lot of heavy lifting being done on either side.
Exactly. And what's really cool about the stuff we're doing is we talk about, Wi-Fi and cellular integration, even mesh network integration. But the cool thing is because we're virtualizing all aspects of the network, it means that no matter what comes out in the future, whether it's 3.5 gigahertz, satellite, thread, Bluetooth, Zigbee, whatever, this is all stuff that we can seamlessly integrate. And because it's over the top, it's very easy to add a new connection type to the system.
Right. So we're going to hop off for another real quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up the conversation and talk to Tyler about the actual forming and launching of Trinity. So you don't want to miss the stories on how this all came about. So stay right where you're at. We'll be right back after this quick and short commercial break. Thanks.
Biz Talk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We are having our conversation today with Tyler Reynolds at Trinity. Tyler and I met each other through the up-ramp, and as we shared in the first couple of segments, gave you a little bit of background. Tyler, I want to kick off this segment asking you a really quick question, which was, what was the path from the Yale football game to the actual formation and launch of Trinity?
Yeah, so it was definitely not a straight line at all. We certainly thought the problem was going to be a lot less complex than it turned out being. So the way that it started was we were in sophomore year of college, and we had this problem at the Harvard-Yale game. And moving forward, we sort of looked after this as a side project that we continued to work on, including in the dining halls. We were using salt and pepper shakers and napkin holders as sort of our first simulators of the system, which is kind of a funny story. And what happened was we kind of had a breakthrough in our junior year. This is, before NFV even existed, as well as a lot of the other industry terms hadn't even been standardized. And, around senior year, we realized, this has some real legs on it. We saw where the industry was moving and the general commoditization of wireless networks, how Wi-Fi needed to be brought into the fold. And we thought, this is a real company. So, after we graduated, 2 days after graduation, we, officially started the company, and it's been a roller coaster ride ever since.
Yeah, it's one of those things you got to be careful what you wish for.
Yes.
So you formed it. Talk about who was the core group at the founding of the company?
So it was me and my co-founder, Stephen Hall. There's another kid in college, in our residential college at Yale, that was also pretty integral on the initial development of the system. It started out completely as a decentralized product, and we realized ultimately that was not going to scale. And so it moved, from 100% decentralized to slowly to the point where today it's completely centralized. And it's kind of funny to see those different formations and ideas that we thought were really good at the time ended up just being we'll call it a fun experience.
So it sounds like multiple pivots through the process to getting to the solution today.
Yeah.
And so where did the original funding come from?
So initially we were funded by Yale through their YEI Innovation Fund, as well as Dorm Room Fund, which is first round capital, sort of baby fund. So that was about $120,000 that got us through the first year. And then, we've raised from UpRamp as well as Idealab out in Pasadena. Okay.
And when was Trinity launched? What was the date?
So we launched the app on the Android App Store in March of 2015. And, right now we're actually just about to start our pilots with the major cable operators next month once everyone gets back from vacation.
Yeah. Welcome to the holidays.
Yep.
So you launched the Android app on the 15th. When was the company actually launched?
So the company was incorporated in January of 2014 when we realized, we really had something, graduated that May, and, working full time on it ever since. So Wow. It took a long time from the Harvard-Yale game until the actual the application launching to the, now the
it's almost three. It's almost three. It's about 3 years.
Oh yeah. So it was about 3 years from the Harvard-Yale game problem until the incorporation of the company. And it's now been about another 2.5 years working on this full time until we've actually had these business deals set up.
Well, and I think this gets into a little bit of a common problem, which is, don't underestimate how much time does it really take.
Right.
To get that idea and to really, get it all the way through the process.
Yep. I at least thought this unit was going to take 1.5 years, and people were just going to instantly understand it and love it. And, Phil, you're an innovator, so you know that is not how things go.
Innovation never is a straight path. Right?
Yeah, if people really understand
this is one of the things that I spent a lot of time talking to, chief executive officers about. Right? They all want to jump in and get their hands dirty. They want to be active on the innovation, but they have a low tolerance for the sausage making.
Yeah.
Right? It's sausage making.
Yeah.
You go try something that doesn't work. You go try something else that doesn't work. You try something else that doesn't work, and then so pretty soon you end up with narrowing it down and getting to a solution. But it's ugly. It's an ugly process to get there.
It's very ugly.
So what's been the downloads on the Android app?
So right now we've actually only restricted the usage of JumpNet. So you can download the app no matter where you are in the world, but it's not going to do anything for you unless you're in the New Haven area. Okay. So the downloads have been pretty small. I think it's under 500, something like that. But mostly we've been not targeting consumers. We've been giving it out as a demo product for our MSO customers.
Right. So, but right now the ability to fire it up and have it in effect take both the Wi-Fi network and the cellular network and manage that whole process of giving you the best bandwidth experience based on where you're at and coverage and et cetera is only really in New Haven, Connecticut today.
Yeah, so if you're in New Haven, Connecticut, and you're a listener of Phil's show, you can download it, and you should see improved performance.
And I'm going to guess it's probably less than a handful, and you probably have a few fingers left over.
Probably, but the longer term,
so if you're a listener in New Haven, you can run out right now and download that app.
Yeah. So, but longer term, the expectation is it will be seamlessly and invisibly integrated into your cell phone, either through your carrier or through your cable provider, and it will work wherever you are.
And so let's talk a little bit. We got a little bit of time here before we jump to another break. So I want to talk a little bit about your experience with UpRamp. So now, albeit UpRamp is run by a gentleman by the name of Scott Brown, who's in my organization, I don't have a lot of day-to-day on UpRamp other than the mentoring that I do with the companies in. So why don't you back up and just give us a quick, maybe 2-minute, your experience of how you got connected to UpRamp and then what the process was through the UpRamp experience.
Yeah, it's a funny story. And so the way that we got introduced to Scott, like most great introductions, was through a LinkedIn email that says in all caps, "This is not spam. I want to talk to you." So,
so hold it. You said that to Scott?
No, Scott emailed us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Scott found us, and so he reached out to me through LinkedIn messaging. I had never heard of Cable Labs before.
Well, welcome to 99% of the world's population.
Yep. So we were really focused on the cellular carriers at that time. Scott sees our product and he goes, I want to talk to you. This is not spam. And I was very skeptical because that does not seem how you would normally address an email. And so I checked out Cable Labs and I checked out Scott. I'm like, okay, this seems pretty legitimate. We made first contact about a year ago. So in December of 2015, Scott says, I have a surprise for you guys. Like, I want us to touch back in February of 2016. And Scott didn't tell us anything. And then so we ended up touching base back in February. And he says, I'm launching this program. I think you guys would be an amazing fit with Cable Labs. And so we looked at it and, ended up applying, ended up starting it in August. And it's really just been a whirlwind. So we've gotten, great connections both on the mentor side and on the business side, that we just couldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah. So to give it a little bit of context on UpRamp, it's our attempt to try to help companies who have interesting innovations, interesting technologies, bypass all the red tape and not knowing who to go call or how to get, proof of concepts put in place and get those done. So Scott runs this program. We limit to 4 companies, and we, in effect, help companies tune their products and even their pitches and get better alignment with a very specific target segment, in this case, the cable industry, on a worldwide basis. but it's not about demo days, as we say. It's not about demo days. It's about deals.
Yep.
It's about helping these companies get to real revenue. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, Tyler, what I'd ask you to do is come up with 3 things that advice you would give to entrepreneurs who've got maybe that raw idea and going to launch it, something you've learned through this whole process. So stay right there. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Before we get started, I need to do a little shout out to our sponsor for this week's show. So this episode of Killer Innovations is brought to you by Zoom. Now, sponsorships are important. It allows us to keep the content quality at the level. It allows us to get the shows done on a regular basis because we can afford a little bit of support help. It also frees up dollars for the nonprofits. If you've been a long-time listener, you know, for instance, we give away all of our national ad spots on the radio show to charity. And any profits, anything left over from the show or from and 100% of my author royalties, etc., all get donated to charity. So, but it's important that we have the sponsorships because they help us do what we do here with the show. So the key here though on Zoom is we only take sponsorships from products we actually use. Zoom, if you haven't tried it, delivers absolutely flawless video, clear audio. They do this phenomenal instant sharing that your team can just work better together no matter where your team members are. Now, how do I know this? I've been using Zoom every day for more than a year, and that's every day, including weekends. And I use it to collaborate with my team who's scattered all over the world. And it's the first video collaboration tool I've ever used that doesn't suck. And it's not just me who thinks so. Gartner, in fact, just recently named Zoom a new leader in its Magic Quadrant for web conferencing this year. So give it a try. You get a free account that allows you to meet with up to 50, that's right, 50 video participants on your free account. So go check it out. Hop on over to killerinnovations.com/Zoom to find out more and give them a shout out. It's important for the sponsors to hear from the listener base so that they continue to support the show. So I would greatly appreciate that. So Tyler, let's get back. When we went to the commercial break, I asked you specifically to come up with 3 pieces of advice for entrepreneurs who maybe have that idea, but who maybe aren't quite ready. But also, you've learned a lot of things through your experience of doing Trinity. What would be those 3 pieces of advice?
Yeah, so the first would definitely be, and we mentioned early in the show, innovation takes a really long time. And you look at us specifically, we're looking at somewhere between 5 to 6 years from the moment we sort of realized the problem, gone through many pivots, and even once we have the solution, we're pushing now 3 years until we're looking at signing our first deal. So innovation has taken much longer than I had previously thought. So really being committed to fixing the problem that's at hand is, I think, really important if you're an entrepreneur, because if you're not committed to the idea, you'll probably abandon it at the
as soon as you hit that first speed bump. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say the second thing is that, and this is, I guess, somewhat similar to innovation takes a long time, which is that you should not expect other people to think your idea is good, or in fact, even understand why it works at all.
If people aren't calling you crazy, then you're not. It's not innovation.
Right. And so that's a huge problem that we had. We had a very difficult time in the beginning saying this is such a big problem, whereas other people are saying, well, why don't it's not that big a deal if I just turn off my Wi-Fi. And they don't sort of think like, okay, well, if you can seamlessly integrate Wi-Fi, that means now you can be a lot more, let's call it serendipitous about deploying the Wi-Fi network, so you can really drive down the cost of mobile connectivity, which is something we really care about at Trinity. And I would say the final thing is make sure you're building a business, not a technology.
Right.
And if you're not building a business, your technology will never see the light of day. With the exception of academia, there's, I think, pretty much no way that you can have a successful business if you're only focused on the technology. So, for us, we started out thinking we were solving mesh networking, when in fact, the most interesting thing we had solved for these network operators, as well as just the average consumer, given the feedback we've heard from just everyday people, is our ability to seamlessly integrate the Wi-Fi and the cellular networks with the link aggregation and the seamless handoff. So if we hadn't focused on building the business, we wouldn't have made it this far. So it was really important that we do that.
Yeah, in fact, that last one's an important one, right? It's one of the most common myths in innovation, which is the best idea wins.
Right.
And it's not the case, right? You may have, that just absolute phenomenal piece of technology, but if you don't marry it with the business side, you're going to struggle. You're going to get frustrated by the fact that there's a lot of other things that I got to get wrapped around that idea, that innovation, to turn it into something that our customers are going to be willing to invest in, move forward with. Customers don't buy technologies or buy innovations; they buy solutions to problems that they really have. And in some cases, you have to do more digging than you would hope to try to figure out what's the problem that you potentially can apply at least some of your raw ideas to. Or in your case, it sounds like going through a series of pivots to get to that solution that met the needs for both users and for the network operators.
Yeah, the funny thing that is very true about our company is that the technology hasn't changed the entire time that we've been doing this. We have had a very clear vision. We've been executing on the technology. What we found has changed much more is what's the business case here. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really about the link aggregation. And in fact, one of the biggest boons for our business was realizing that, in fact, one of the biggest reasons why people were talking with us and were interested in our solution is that's completely over the top, right? You normally say, oh, if you want the best technical solution, you have to get really deep into the core of networks and, move this to there and do all this stuff, but people don't want to touch it. So from a business side, the way that we can get our technology actually out in the real world is to have an over-the-top solution, which is not something, if you had asked me 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I would have thought would be the case. So,
Tyler, really quick, if people want to follow what's going on at Trinity Networks, where's the best place to find Trinity at?
So you can follow our website at trinitymobilenetworks.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, which is at JumpNetHQ.
JumpNetHQ. So, Tyler, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you for taking the time for this Sunday to join up. We're going to run out here at the end of the show, but really quick, we've got this contest that's coming up really quick. For the launch of March, you get an opportunity to get a 1 minute or a 1 hour slot on our show. I'll post some more information on it, but I'll talk more about it in next week's show because we have run out of time. So with that, we're going to sign off this week. Thank you for joining. Give us your feedback. Let us know. Go over to killerinnovations.com. Get all the show notes. And with that, we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. Biz Talk Radio.
Autism. 1 out of every 68 children in America are impacted across every race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic group. If you aren't directly affected, someone you know is. Today's world doesn't support those on the autism spectrum. It needs hacking for us to truly welcome those who think and create differently than ourselves. We're hacking autism. a nonprofit charity with a mission to hack therapy, technologies, and career opportunities that improve the personal and professional lives of people on the autism spectrum. We believe that everyone can play a role in supporting those on the autism spectrum so that they can show their unique talents and abilities in this fast-paced world. You aren't powerless in this fight. Use your gifts and talents to make a positive impact. Join us in making a difference. Go to hackingautism.org to learn more.
Carpenters have their hammers and saws, chefs have their outfitted kitchens, and musicians have their instruments. A craftsman's ability to do their job is dependent on having the right tools. So where does an innovator, someone who takes an idea and makes it real, find the right tools to do their job? Outfit your innovator's garage by visiting innovation.tools. Innovation.tools is an online store created by innovators for innovators. It's where you will find tested and proven tools to help you create that next great product or service. These tools include books, audio training, video training, brainstorming how-tos, and much, much more. And for a limited time, listeners of Killer Innovations will get 25% off on your first order by using the discount code RADIO at checkout. And 100% of our profits from your purchases will be donated to charity. So go to innovation.tools and create that next great innovation.
Rwanda is a shining example of how the global community can come together and rebuild a country after a devastating genocide. But there is still more that needs to be done. In the rural villages, students are crowded into schools with no electricity, no running water, no internet access, and limited sanitation. Will these kids be ready to continue the rebuilding of Rwanda, or will they be dependent upon others? Through education and employment, boys and girls have an equally promising future that can transform their struggling communities. For $20 a month, a child can be educated and a community strengthened. By supporting Pioneer Education Africa, a 501c3 charity, you partner with others to provide education that will prepare a generation to take on the task of self-reliance. 100% of the proceeds received go directly to the education of the children. Visit pioneereducationafrica.com to find out more.